You open a closet that used to belong to someone who just retired. Golf clubs still wrapped in plastic. A dehydrator used twice. A leather jacket bought for a trip that got canceled. None of it was a mistake at the time. Every single item felt like a reward for 30 years of showing up to work. But ask that same person, 5 years into retirement, what they'd take back, and the answer is almost never nothing. It's usually a very specific list. And the strange part is, it's rarely the thing you'd expect. You'd think the regret would be about the big obvious splurges, the Rolex, the cruise, the steak dinners. But, according to the Employee Benefit Research Institute, which has run its retirement confidence survey for over 3 decades, the purchases retirees regret most aren't the impulsive ones. They're the ones that felt responsible, the ones that felt like, this is what retired people are supposed to buy. So let's actually walk through the list. Not to shame anyone for buying things, but because understanding why these 17 purchases go wrong tells you something important about how your brain handles money once the paycheck stops. Picture a retiree named David, 40 years at the same company, a pension, a decent 401k, no debt. The month he retires, he feels like he's finally allowed to spend. Not recklessly, responsibly. Every purchase he makes over the next 2 years will feel completely reasonable to him at the time. And every single one of them will show up, almost item for item, on this list. Start with the one everyone already knows about. The boat. It shows up in almost every survey on retirement regret, and the reason isn't the price tag. It's the math nobody does beforehand. Boat owners use their boats, on average, less than 15 days a year. The other 350 days, it sits there, depreciating, costing money in storage, insurance, and maintenance. Economists call this the sunk cost fallacy, a term first studied in depth by researchers Hal Arksys and Catherine Bloomer in 1985. Once you've spent the money, you keep spending more to justify the original purchase, even when the joy stopped a long time ago. The RV follows the same pattern, just bigger. It promises freedom, open roads, no schedules, no boss. But the maintenance alone can run into thousands per year. And most RVs get used for 1 or 2 long trips before they become a very expensive driveway ornament. Then, there's the vacation home. This one feels different because it's not a toy, it's real estate. It's an investment. Except property taxes don't pause when you're not there. Neither does the roof that eventually needs replacing or the pipes that freeze in winter. Vanguard's research on retirement spending patterns found something called the retirement spending smile. Spending is high early in retirement, dips in the middle years, then rises again for healthcare. A second home locks you into high spending during exactly the years your income is most fixed. The timeshare deserves its own paragraph because almost nobody regrets it a little. They regret it completely. The pitch is always the same. Guaranteed vacations, locked-in prices, a week that's yours forever. What rarely gets mentioned is the resale market. Timeshares routinely sell for a fraction of what people paid, when they sell at all. Many owners end up paying someone else just to take the contract off their hands. Right alongside it sits the prepaid vacation package. The all-inclusive cruise booked a year in advance, paid in full because the early bird price felt too good to pass up. It locks in a version of your future that has to match a version of your present health, energy, and interest. 3 things that change more in a year than most people expect. Now here's where it gets less obvious. The oversized forever home. The one bought right before or right after retiring, the one with the extra bedrooms for grandkids who visit twice a year. Behavioral economist Richard Thaler, who won the Nobel Prize for his work on mental accounting, showed that people treat money differently depending on which mental bucket it sits in. A bigger house gets filed under security. But security with 4 extra bathrooms to heat, cool, and clean isn't security. It's overhead. Home renovations follow the same trap. The dream kitchen, the finished basement. Research from Merrill Lynch and AgeWave studies on retirement finances found that home-related spending is one of the categories retirees most often say they'd scale back if they could do it again. Not because the renovation wasn't nice, but because it rarely delivered the daily joy that justified the cost. Then there's the luxury car. The one bought the month after the retirement party, often in cash, often described as finally treating myself. New cars lose a significant chunk of their value the moment they leave the lot, and a fixed income doesn't recover from depreciation the way a salary does. Whole life insurance policies bought late in life belong on this list too. And this one surprises people. It sounds responsible. It sounds like protecting your family. But when it's purchased in your 60s, the premiums are high, the payout timeline is long, and the same money invested in a simple diversified portfolio would very likely outperform it. Thomas Stanley, author of The Millionaire Next Door, spent decades studying actual wealthy households, and one pattern kept repeating. The truly financially secure rarely bought complicated financial products. They bought simple ones and left them alone. High-fee annuities show up right next to it. Sold with the promise of guaranteed income. They often come wrapped in surrender charges and commissions that quietly eat into the very security they're supposed to provide. The country club membership. The golf equipment upgraded every season. The boat's cousin, essentially. Recurring costs justified by a handful of good days. Then the purchases made for other people. Large cash gifts to adult children. Covering a grandchild's wedding in full. Paying off someone else's debt. Generous. Understandable. And according to Daniel Kahneman's research on loss aversion, deeply hard to reverse once the pattern starts. Because pulling back later doesn't just cost money, it feels like taking something away. Jewelry and watches bought as I earned this purchases. Prepaid funeral packages sold with urgency that doesn't match the actual need. Expensive home theater systems used for the first few months and then forgotten. Hobby equipment, the pottery wheel, the woodworking shop, the guitar, bought to fill time that, it turns out, doesn't need filling as much as expected. A second vehicle, kept just in case, that mostly sits in the garage, racking up insurance premiums. And the housewarming style splurge on new furniture for the whole house at once, chasing a fresh start feeling that fades within a season. 17 purchases, all different price tags, all different categories, all pointing at the same psychological trap. Psychologists Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell described this trap back in 1971 as the hedonic treadmill, the tendency for a spike in happiness from a new purchase to fade back to your baseline mood within weeks or months, no matter how much the thing cost. David doesn't feel like a happier man because he owns a boat. He just feels, eventually, like the same man who now also owns a boat. Notice what almost every single item on this list has in common. None of them were reckless. Every one of them felt earned, deserved, responsible even. That's the twist nobody talks about. The purchases people regret most in retirement aren't the ones that felt indulgent in the moment. They're the ones that felt justified. That's actually the more dangerous kind of spending decision, because justified purchases don't trigger the same internal alarm that reckless ones do. You don't second-guess the responsible boat. Purchase the way you'd second-guess a reckless one because it doesn't feel reckless. It feels earned. So what actually separates the retirees who don't end up on this list? It's rarely that they spent less. AgeWave's research on retirement satisfaction points to something more specific. The people with the fewest regrets bought experiences and access, not ownership. A boat rental costs a fraction of boat ownership, and comes with none of the maintenance. A vacation rental gets you the same view as the vacation home, minus the property taxes. Renting the freedom instead of owning the obligation. Here's the part that applies to you right now, whether retirement is 5 years away or 30. Every someday purchase you're planning, the boat, the RV, the dream renovation, ask one question before you buy it. Not can I afford this, but will I still want this in 3 years? Or will I want what it represents now, and something else entirely by then? Go back to that closet. The golf clubs still in plastic, the dehydrator used twice. None of it was a mistake in the moment. It only became one in hindsight, once the version of the person who wanted it had already changed. The real lesson isn't to stop rewarding yourself for decades of work. It's to make sure the reward is something your future self still wants to open the closet and find.